Hi there, it's Florence here, and today I'm back again with another episode of my knitting video podcast. I believe this is episode number 19, I might be wrong. Basically, I'm just going to be taking half an hour or so to show you what I currently have on my needles and any projects that I have recently finished, any new yarn that I picked up, things like that. In today's episode I have 3 finished objects I think, and then a couple of different projects on the go that I'm going to be showing you. I normally start these videos by mentioning whatever I'm wearing. Today I'm not wearing any knitwear. Not even socks. I think that's a first from this channel. But it seems pretty accurate. I'd say I don't wear knitwear about 1 day in 20, so 20 episodes in, it's not so surprising there's been 1 day where I'm not wearing any. So I guess that means I can jump straight into my first finished object. Okay, so first off, this makes me seem very unprofessional, but I have forgotten what this pattern is called. It's a My Favourite Things knitwear pattern, so it's going to have a number. I want to say that this is camisole number 7. Okay, yes, this is camisole number 7. Now, I think that My Favourite Things knitwear makes the best camisole patterns. She puts out a bunch of them every year, maybe 4 or 5 each year, something like that, quite a few. This year I think she's been doing more blouses than camisoles, but regardless, she's been releasing patterns that I still want to make. And I think this one was from last summer. I've been wanting to make it since I originally saw the pattern, but it's one of those projects that I've put off working on for one reason or another. It's never been the most exciting thing I've had planned, and so I haven't actually taken the time to knit it until now. In the last episode I hadn't even cast this on, so this is a fully new one for me to show on my channel today. The reason why I finally decided to knit this camisole was I had some yarn that I wanted to use up. This yarn is the Pure Silk from Knitting for Olive. It is a 100% silk yarn. It is a cruelty-free silk, so I believe that means they let the silkworms hatch, leave their little silk cocoons peacefully, rather than boiling them, which is a step involved in manufacturing a lot of other silk. It also gives it quite a different texture to a lot of other silk yarn. It is not rough, like it's not scratchy, but it definitely isn't that soft, shiny, silky feeling that you get from a lot of other non-cruelty-free silk yarn. I will say there are soft cruelty-free silks out there as well, but it tends to be pretty expensive. This is a cheaper silk yarn. I think it costs... Knitting for Olive varies quite a lot with where you buy it. It's going to be around £8 to £10 per ball, I would say, with each ball being 50 grams and I think 250 meters. Knitting for Olive have 3 main summer camisole type yarns in their lineup: the merino, the cotton merino and the pure silk. The merino is the one that I'm most familiar with because I use it all the time. It is very soft. I don't find it to be too warm for summer camisoles and things, and it has all the properties that make me like wool so much. It will spring back into its shape if your ribbed camisole stretches out over time. You wash it, you block it, and it'll be like new again. It also has a beautiful colour selection and it's really comfortable to knit with. I don't like the cotton merino quite so much, and I have only used it once, so it's not something I can discuss in a lot of detail, but the pure silk I have used a handful of times now. As a result, I feel like I was quite familiar with the pros and cons of it, and so having it in stash, I was looking for a pattern that would work well with this yarn in particular. So, as I was saying, with the Knitting for Olive merino, if the garment begins to lose its shape, you can wash and block it and it'll go back to its original shape, which makes it very suitable for sort of fitted camisoles. This, on the other hand, does stretch out, so it needed to be something that was relaxed fit and that I wanted to be relaxed fit in order to work well with the yarn. I also am not the biggest fan of some particular stitch patterns in the pure silk. It's never going to look as neat and even as the merino will, but I think that this broken rib always looks really pretty with plant fibre type yarns because it has a little bit of a messy textured look to it anyway, and so I think it's a really nice combination. I think that the original yarn for this pattern, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the yarn specified is the yarn Saphira from Pasquale, which is a yarn that I'm actually super familiar with. I have released one of my patterns for that yarn. It's a 75% merino and 25% silk blend. It's very soft. It's quite an expensive yarn, but one of the most beautiful yarns I've ever used. It looks so even and beautiful when you knit it up. I just love it. It's definitely on the thicker side for a fingering weight yarn, whereas I would say that this is more of a thinner fingering weight yarn. I mean, it is a true fingering weight, but it's definitely on the thinner side. So I was a little bit worried about gauge, but surprisingly it turned out just fine after I blocked it, maybe due to the stretching. I should also take the time to mention the colour. The colour of the pure silk that I used for this project is called Lamb's Ears, I think. They've actually just brought out a bunch more colours of pure silk, and some of them are really pretty. There's one called Pea Shoots, which I think is really cute, and it's this lovely green, it's so pretty. So yes, I cast this top on, and I decided to make this top in the smallest size. I never know what the etiquette is with discussing measurements and choosing sizes in knitting podcasts. I think some people prefer you not to mention your measurements in the video. Just skip 10 seconds if you don't want me to talk about it. I have a roughly 83 centimetre bust measurement, which puts me into the smallest size category for these patterns, the micro-things knitwear and the petite knit. I generally should be knitting extra small. It's not quite so clear cut though, because even though in theory I have the measurement to knit the extra small, I'm not that small, I just have a smaller bust measurement. And so often I'm kind of unsure whether I'm going to get the look I want if I do knit the smallest size. Like, I'm a very pear-shaped human, you know? This, however, is big on me. I will discuss some fit issues with it later, but this is super roomy and I'm definitely glad I knitted the smallest size, because I think if I'd knitted one size up, it would have been just a bad fit. The reason why you didn't see this top in the last episode is that this project took me 4 days to knit. It's knitted on 3mm needles, so it's honestly kind of wild that it took me that little time. I think 2 weeks is sort of, if I'm casually knitting a camisole, how long it takes to complete. I've done quite a few in 1 week if it's my main project. 4 days is a personal best. In terms of yarn consumption, I started the third ball, but I knitted maybe 2 rounds before I decided it was the length I wanted and bound off. So basically this is exactly 2 balls worth of the pure silk for the size extra small. I definitely wouldn't bother buying a third if I was going to make this again. I will say if you're using the merino, it might use slightly more yarn just because this did stretch out a lot while blocking, and I didn't end up needing to knit it as long as I thought I might. So I knitted this to pattern basically. I don't think I made any modifications, I just followed the instructions. The construction with this one is that it's knitted top down. It's one of those ones where you sort of knit the 4 triangles here, here, and the same on the back, and then you end up joining them all in the round to just knit the body in the round down. Which is nice because it means that if you are running short on yarn, you can knit until you run out and then bind off. I just find the triangle method a little bit frustrating when I'm starting off a project, knitting all these little pieces that I'm going to have to assemble. Anyway, it wasn't too bad for this one. Hopefully you can see some of the sort of decorative shaping on the front. It kind of looks like there's bust shaping. There isn't really bust shaping on this. Like, this is a flat piece of fabric with a consistent stitch count throughout. You increase in some places and decrease in others, so the stitch count doesn't change, but you get that travelling line of rib. I mean, I suppose technically it could give a tiny bit of shaping because it means that the fabric will stretch a little bit less along this line because the stitches do sit diagonally, but realistically it's not really offering any shaping, I would say. It looks pretty though, it's definitely a really flattering design. So 4 days passed, I finished this camisole, I blocked it and I tried it on, and the result was not good. I'm now regretting not taking pictures when I tried it on originally, but, well, they probably wouldn't have been safe for YouTube. Basically, the straps were just too long, so it sat very, very low. I mean, it covered everything if I was sitting still, but it wouldn't be something that I could wear out. So I decided that the first thing to do would be to take a bunch of length out of the straps. I should actually mention here, I don't think that any of this is the fault of the pattern. My yarn choice is very different from the original yarn recommendation, which is predominantly wool, and this yarn does have a tendency to stretch out. Straps in particular in this yarn are going to stretch. It's just something I was prepared for. The pattern doesn't tell you to knit your straps to length or anything, because they are the first part of the project, because you start off with the triangles and then assemble them in the round. It means that you can't really try it on to figure out how long the straps need to be. It does actually just give you a specific number of rows that you knit before you start increasing for the triangles. So it was really hard to get an idea of how it's going to sit, and I had confidence that if this did happen, I could deal with the problem later, and so I had to. So in order to shorten the straps, I think the best thing to do would just be to take a pair of scissors and cut off the strap where you want to, take out a couple of inches. If you're worried about dropping stitches, you could use your knitting needles and like pick the stitches up by putting the knitting needle through the fabric and then cut above there, and then carefully pull out the yarn up to those live stitches, and I guess then Kitchener stitch the live stitches together. I did almost the same thing. I actually sewed it first, so I folded the strap like this, you know, kind of like you would if you're sewing something, like you just fold it over and then sew a seam along here. I just sewed that seam and then I cut off the folded extra fabric and ripped the thread out until I just had a smooth join. I don't know if you can see, it pretty much is seamless. You can see on the inside where I've had to weave a couple of extra ends in, but it's basically a seamless join. When I was Kitchener stitching it, I don't know that I worried about knit stitches and purl stitches. I don't think I did. I think I just Kitchener stitched like I would in stockinette, and you really can't tell. It's on the shoulder, it's going to be covered by my hair. I don't think it matters too much. So that improved the fit a lot. I'm very conscious of the fact that if I wear this top more, the straps will probably stretch out more and I might have to do this again. And I'm actually running out of plain stockinette rows to cut out before the increases start. I guess at some point I will just take another inch out of the straps and hopefully that will be enough. Now, other than that, the fit is okay. As I mentioned before, it is definitely a little bit on the large side for me. This mostly is just an issue because it is quite roomy under the arm. It kind of flares out a little bit here and you can see my bra. This is marketed as a bra-friendly pattern and, you know, as I said, I think if yours fitted better, if you used a better yarn option, it probably would be bra-friendly. The straps do sort of sit in the right place and are wide enough to cover my bra straps. It's just that because the whole thing is a little bit large, it does move around a bit. I am happy with this top and I do recommend the pattern if you like the look of it. I must say it is very well written and really addictive and fast knit. Just maybe don't go for this yarn, go for the merino or a merino and silk blend like is originally recommended, or else just be prepared to make a bunch of modifications either as you're working on it or afterwards, and perhaps size down if you're in doubt. Okay, on to finished object number 2. If you follow my YouTube channel, you have probably seen these before because these were the focus of my last video. This is a pair of socks that I recently finished knitting. I designed these socks because I wanted to make a lace sock tutorial for my YouTube channel. I've had a lot of requests for a sock tutorial. I don't really make vanilla socks myself. All of my socks follow a bunch of different patterns. And so I thought it would be more on brand for me to write a pattern for more of a fun sock and film a tutorial for that. So I did. These socks have been on the needles for so long, so I have showed them in podcasts before, basically because I knitted one, then I sent the pattern off for test knitting, and then once that had been tested and edited, I then knitted the second sock on camera for the tutorial, and that's a pretty slow process as well because every time I finish one step I have to sit down on my camera and wait for it to be sunny and then film a clip, and so these have been on the needles for a couple of months. I normally knit socks a lot faster than that, but I have to say I'm really happy with the result. For these, the yarn that I used is Regia Premium. Regia has a line of different, they call them premium sock yarns, which have a little bit of different fibre in them. So this is Regia Premium Bamboo. It's still wool-based but has some bamboo fibre in it, but they also have a Regia Premium Silk. I think there's a yak one as well. I have a few of them and I've really enjoyed all of them, and they all wear pretty well since they are mostly a wool and nylon sock yarn. I will put the colour in the description as always, but I think it's called Natur or Natural. I think it might be colour number 2. If you're interested in the construction or anything about these socks, the last video I posted is an hour long and all about them, so you can check that out. But basically I'm super happy with them. When I do design a sock pattern myself like this, it means that I can just include all of the techniques that I like the most, and so I always have a really great time knitting them. This is a really fun and addictive lace pattern to knit. It's also super easy, and it's quite beginner friendly. So if you have done a little bit of knitting before, I wouldn't say this is a great first time knitting pattern. Obviously, you do you. If you want to challenge yourself, go for it. But I think if you've done a little bit of knitting and you want to really step up your skills, this would be a good place to start. I feel like since these socks have been showed in so many podcast episodes, I don't have much else to say, but they're really nice, I'm really happy with them, and you should go and make a pair. Oh yeah, I will mention, I always link all of the patterns in the description if the projects I'm working on do have patterns. This one obviously does have a pattern, it is on my Ravelry. The pattern does use a pay what you want system, so there are a couple of different codes you can use to get the pattern for half off or for free. So you can pay whatever you can afford to pay to support my work. So this is a free pattern if you'd like it to be a free pattern, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, this is a finished object, but I haven't finished weaving the ends in, so please don't judge me for that. I will do that after filming this video because I need to photograph this. I showed this in the last video as well. It is this cardigan. So, before I start talking about this, this is an ad. I was sent the yarn that I used to knit this cardigan free of charge. I guess I will talk first of all about this yarn because it is quite special. This yarn is from Whistlebare, which is a company that is based in the UK, in England. They have a farm in Northumberland where they have goats and sheep, and so this is a mohair based yarn. I think it's 80% mohair and 20% wool, which is all grown and spun and dyed in the UK. This yarn is the yeavering bell DK. It also comes in various other weights. I think there's a fingering weight, there might be a heavier weight, I'm not sure. And they do a more tightly spun mohair based sock yarn as well. This colour is called Willow the Wisp. It's grey, perhaps you can see more if I show the back where there's sort of a big expansive stockinette. But it has a really pretty slight variation to it. It's really subtle, I like it a lot. I definitely describe it as a little bit of a green grey. Now something about this yarn just felt really girly to me. It's very fluffy, very light, it blocks out really nicely. Yes, a word of warning on it, when you knit a swatch or try this yarn out, it does look very uneven and not very nice when you first knit it up. It is transformed by blocking. Once you block it, it fluffs up, it becomes all smooth and even, it looks so much prettier. So yeah, that's something I feel I should say about it. But basically as a result of its lightness and fluffiness, I really wanted to knit a very girly piece of clothing with it, and so I did this little, I call it a jacket rather than a cardigan. I think because it doesn't have any rib on it, it feels more jacket than cardigan to me. So you can see it has ties to secure the front and folded hems. I don't know if you can see, there are these lateral braid details above all of the folded hems that I think give a really nice clean finish, and then I-cord on the front. It's a little bit hard to see when I'm holding it up, I know, so I will photograph this and make sure to put some pictures here so that you can see what this cardigan looks like when it is worn. Okay, so this is not something that there is a pattern for it yet, this is something I knitted freehand. Construction works as follows: I cast on along the back of the neck, increased for the shoulders while knitting down for the back panel, and then picked up stitches on each shoulder in turn. Then I joined them all and the body is knitted flat. And then to finish off, I picked up stitches for the sleeves and I used short rows to shape the top of the sleeve. Yeah, it's quite a standard cardigan construction. I'm relatively happy with the result. I will say that it is a little bit of a boxier fit on me than I imagined. I think that's just a tricky thing when it comes to figuring out measurements for a piece like this, where the garment doesn't close over the bust. Normally when you are choosing a size, you choose based on bust measurement, but with these sorts of things that are V-neck and the bottom of the V comes to below the widest point of the bust, or anything that's sort of a wrap, it's a lot harder to use that bust measurement to choose the size or to make calculations for stitch counts for the size. For example, I have a pattern for a wrap cardigan called the Robinson wrap cardigan, and I quite often get messages from people asking what the bust measurements are for the sizes, and I really can't tell you because it is a wrap. It's so customizable or adjustable. It's very hard to put a number on it, which is why that pattern goes mostly off waist measurements. So yeah, for this one, it has not a lot of ease around the bust, but that does leave it quite boxy where it actually does close. Also, the yoke depth on this is slightly short for me. That is just a mistake with my calculations, and I am having a few people test a pattern for this at the moment. That issue should be fixed in the pattern that is being tested. It's not bad enough that I will rip this out and go back to fix it on my own cardigan. It's just, you know, when you try on something you've knitted and you're like, oh, I could change this, this and this. Those are the things for this cardigan. It's a pretty quick knit. I think I'm always surprised when I knit things that are slightly cropped or just less oversized. They always come together a lot more quickly than I'm expecting. This was one of those pieces, although I did have a minor mishap where I did manage to knit a sleeve on the wrong needle size for most of it, and I had to rip it out and start over. Other than that, a pretty fast and smooth knit. Okay, so those are my 3 finished objects, and I will now move on to talk about the pieces that I'm currently working on. I guess I'll start off with the yellow. So if you follow me on Instagram, which my Instagram is handmade by Florence, if you'd like to follow me on there, I made some posts on my Instagram stories the other day about yellow yarn. I wear a lot of blue and green, and I've been really wanting a jumper in a lemony yellow colour, like this painting up here. It looks nice with the rest of the room, the blues, right? I think a yellow is a nice addition to a very cool toned wardrobe. So I have been searching for the perfect yellow yarn. I'll see if I can put the Instagram story I posted here so that you can see the different options that I had. From memory, I think there was a sandnes garn double Sunday, a knitting for olive, maybe dusty banana. There was a sandnes garn alpaca wool, which is a really pretty yellow. I think that was my favourite of the four. And there was a really lovely custard mohair by Canard. So they were the four that I was considering. And then I'm about to move house. So a couple of weeks ago I went to have a look at the flat that I was hoping to rent, which I now am successfully renting. I'm not there yet, I'll be going this weekend. And while I was in Oxford, I went on a little trip to the Oxford yarn store, which I strongly recommend. It's a very, very lovely yarn shop. It's really small and incredibly dense. Every wall is just floor to ceiling, beautiful yarn. They have the most amazing selection of Isia that I have ever seen anywhere. They have a lot of sandnes garn, they have some knitting for olive, so it's very thorough in its coverage of the big Scandinavian yarn brands, I guess. They do have other stuff as well. There's quite a bit of hand dyed, they have a lot of rowan, all kinds of things. I think there's something for everyone there. I was taking a look at the double Sunday since I did overwhelmingly win the poll I put on my Instagram stories, and it was definitely too saturated, too peachy, too custardy for me. And it wasn't going to work, and I was feeling a little bit sad about that. And then I came across this one. So this is also from Sandnes Garn. I love how I put two different Sandnes Garn yarns on my poll and ended up buying a third one. This is the Sandnes Garn Pear Gynt, and the colour is 2122. It might have a name. Sandnes Garn yarn generally has names, but they never put them on the labels, and a lot of websites don't list them as well, so it's hard to know. I really liked this yellow from the moment I saw it. It is definitely a slightly muted lemony colour. It's very, very pretty. I'm never sure about yellow because I'm blonde and I'm worried that it's going to sort of clash weirdly with my hair colour, but I've decided to just ignore that. We're just going to make the yellow jumper and worry about styling it later. Previously in the Oxford yarn store, I've had a couple of times where I've really set my heart on some yarn, and then I asked how much they had in stock, and it wasn't enough for me to make a jumper. There were like 35 balls of this one in stock. I'm pretty sure I am the only person who is so into the yellow right now. I mean, to be fair, I've seen a couple of other people posting about it, but it's definitely not a super hyped colour, so it's easy to find in stock, which is nice. It's also pleasingly cheap. I bought, I want to say 12 balls of this, plus some other yarn as well, which I'll show in a minute, and I think I paid around £50. My mum was with me, and she knows how much I spend on yarn. She left the shop and she was like, Florence, that costs so much less than I was expecting. And I was like, yeah, me too. The Pear Gynt isn't very expensive. The one downside is the yardage on this is not a lot. I think it's 90 metres per ball, which is not a lot for a DK weight. Yes, 91 metres. It's not at all a lot for a DK weight yarn, and so you do have to buy so many of them. When I posted some pictures of this on my story and also on my Instagram account, I got a lot of questions about this yarn, specifically about its scratchiness. I think Petite Knit is releasing some new collaboration colourways with Sandnes Garn around now, and so she's been knitting with this yarn a lot, and I think a lot of people are thinking about using it. I've used this for a couple of bits before. I really like it. There were aeroplanes like flying in formation, like in a triangle. I live in the middle of nowhere, that was so exciting. This is a woolly wool. What I will say is, if you are sensitive to wool, if you are someone who has to particularly think about whether wool is going to be scratchy or not, I would say you probably want to pass on this one. You can tell you're wearing it. It does feel, at least for me, and I'm not particularly sensitive to wool, a little bit scratchy. However, I also really like how dense and substantial the fabric you knit up is. It really is a bit thick for a DK weight, so it gives a really sturdy feeling fabric. It's very warm, and I like wool which has a little bit of something to it, you know? Like, it's a nice woolly wool. It's also definitely not ridiculously scratchy. There are a lot of other wools I've tried that I find much scratchier than this. So if you don't have a particular wool sensitivity, maybe this is a nice option for you. So, once I bought it, I didn't mess around. I've made some progress. Now, when I was knitting this, I didn't particularly want to think about what I was doing. I wanted this to be a really stress-free, relaxing knit, and so I wanted to follow a pattern, but also there weren't any patterns that quite were the jumper that I was looking for. So I think on my Ravelry, I listed this as a modified version of the petite knit chestnut sweater. To be honest, there's not much of the chestnut sweater left in this. I used the chestnut sweater for the number of stitches to cast on at the back of the neck and the sort of depth of the armhole. The shoulders, however, are constructed quite differently. Petite knits jumpers normally feature like short row shoulder shaping. This uses the sort of shoulder shaping with increases every row. It appears in a lot of My Favourite Things knitwear patterns, but also a lot of stuff by other designers. I guess it's most similar to the sweater number 11 by My Favourite Things knitwear, which is a pattern that I particularly dislike because I really like all of the details, but I hate the way that jumper fits. So yeah, like sweater number 11 details on a petite knit chestnut sweater. And then the collar is kind of similar to the petite knit Moby sweater. So it's a folded ribbed collar, but instead of a purl row, it has the 3 rows of double knitting for the fold. So 2 rows are on the right side of the collar, and there's only 1 corresponding row on the inside of the collar, which kind of gives it a folded shape. And it also keeps the collar in, so it's less likely to stretch out, because you're essentially doing a couple of rounds with half as many stitches along the fold. It's a smart technique. I find it leaves the head hole really small. I'm sort of hoping it'll stretch out a bit. Dogs have suddenly decided to be needy. They couldn't make it till the end of filming, so my apologies. I'm moving out in like 3 days. I want to give them attention since I'm about to not see them again. Hopefully they're quiet. Stitch counts are pretty much the same as the smallest size of the chestnut sweater, which I think is an extra small. And from this point onwards, I think I'm just going to follow the chestnut sweater pattern in terms of the length and the sleeves. I think overall I'm really happy with how Frankensteining these patterns together has gone. It gives a lot of the details I like, and because the colour is a little bit more of a statement, at least for me, I'm a very neutral person. I think that having a very simple style with just some really clean details is going to result in the most wearable finished object. Okay, so on to the final thing. When I was talking about the yellow jumper, I mentioned that I had bought another yarn from the Oxford yarn store as well, and I got 2 balls of this. This is also from Sandnes Garn. This is the yarn Perfect from Sandnes Garn. It's a DK weight. I'd say it's a slightly heavier DK weight perhaps, and it is 80% wool and 20% nylon. This is great. I love a DK weight sock. I like my socks with nylon in. I wear straight through them otherwise, and there aren't that many DK weight sock yarns out there. I fully appreciate there are other options like holding a sock yarn with mohair or holding 2 strands of sock yarn together, but I'm still really excited to try this. If you've watched my channel a few times before, you'll know that I am on a mission to try out as many different sock yarns as possible, and so I will never pass up an opportunity to try another one. The other advantage of this was it was in a bargain bin at the Oxford yarn store, so I think I spent £2 something per ball on the 2 balls, which is great. The one problem is that I only bought 2. I didn't check the yardage on these. I felt like it was probably enough if I bought 2. They're 100 meters each, so I'm cutting this quite fine. The colour, by the way, is 2650. It's somewhere between a grey and a beige, a lovely greyish. I like it a lot. Now with these, I am working on a chunky version of a sock pattern that I released at the start of this year called the Mountain Walk sock. Maybe I can put a picture of the original sock here. I think it's pretty cute. I'm obviously biased. Since winter is approaching, I wanted to design a chunkier version which you can knit up in a weekend and which is extra cozy for when the weather gets a little bit colder, and so that is what I'm doing here. Needles are 3mm, which is the standard size I use to knit a DK weight sock, and it has that same cabled pattern as the original Mountain Walk sock, just extra chunky. These aren't real cables, they're all mock cables, which is convenient because if you don't feel super confident doing cables out of cable needle, you don't have to drop any stitches for this. Even if you are confident cabling without a cable needle, I still find that these sorts of mock cables let me knit a lot faster because it's sort of uninterrupted, and so I really like this technique. I think these socks will be really cute and really cozy, and I don't know, I just find I wear my DK weight hand knit socks a lot in the winter, particularly with boots. I find them really comfy. I really thought that they were just a thing you did when you were too lazy to knit a regular sock, since they are so much faster, and I have eaten my words because I wear DK weight socks all the time, and I will be knitting a bunch of them this year, I'm sure. So yes, Mountain Walk Chunky, those are coming along nicely. Aside from, well, I have just finished the gusset. These are cuffed down, by the way, you can kind of see. And this is how much I have left. So I am thinking I'm not going to finish the foot with this, and I need this one for the second sock. This yarn is actually pretty tricky to find in the UK. They sell it in 1 or 2 places, but it seems to be out of stock a lot. I don't know if it's being discontinued or something, if it is just not easily available, but finding another one of these is going to be a pain. Maybe I can knit the toe with something else, we'll see. Anyway, that is it for this episode. I really hoped you enjoyed watching. I'm sorry if it has seemed disjointed. These dogs have been a pain. I don't know if you can hear Rolo barking every 6 seconds, but this is what I have been dealing with for this entire videoing process. My camera is just full of like 1 minute long clips that I'm going to have to somehow splice together to make a video. But thank you very much for watching. I will be back again soon with another video. Goodbye.